The disappearance of Malaysian Flight 370 has become one of the most complex mysteries in aviation history. The disappearance of the Boeing 777 from all radars remained the strangest flight in the history of global aviation. Despite the participation of a group of countries in search operations, no trace or evidence of the plane's crash site or reason for its disappearance has emerged. The plane stopped communicating with monitoring devices just 50 minutes after the start of the flight, making it one of the most complex and mysterious search operations in aviation history. The flight took off on the 8th of March, 2014. At 12:41 a.m. Malaysia time, when Malaysia Airlines announced the departure of the scheduled flight MH370, which would take off from Kuala Lumpur Airport in Malaysia towards the Chinese capital, Beijing. And it was supposed to arrive at 6:30 in the morning, China time, with 227 passengers and 12 crew members, totaling 239 people. As for the flight captain, he was the Malaysian Zahari Ahmad Shah, who was 53 years old at the time, with extensive experience in aviation. The aircraft was a Boeing 777 with a fuel tank allowing for up to 9 hours of continuous flight. Given its strong capacity, Malaysia Airlines relied on it for long journeys, especially for daily flights between Malaysia and China. The plane that embarked on Flight M370 specifically had been making the same journey between Malaysia and China daily for 11 consecutive years, and it had never experienced any malfunction or received any complaints. For this reason, the flight was expected to go and return safely like all its previous flights. Indeed, the flight took off from the capital's airport, Kuala Lumpur, and flew safely in the airspace at 12:41 minutes past midnight at Malaysia time. The weather is stable, free of storms, and the sky is clear. About 40 minutes after the flight took off, exactly at 1:20 after midnight, the plane reached the South China Sea. This would take it out of Malaysian airspace and into Vietnamese airspace. At the same time, the Malaysian Air Navigation Management contacted the pilot, Zahari Ahmad Shah, and asked him to establish communication with the Vietnamese Air Navigation Management, which would become responsible for monitoring the plane within its airspace. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah responded to them, agreeing to their routine request. The major shock was that this was the last time they heard a response from the pilot, because approximately 2 minutes after this conversation, the plane disappeared completely from all radars suddenly without any warning, and it did not even enter the Vietnamese airspace as expected. This sudden incident created tension and anxiety between the Malaysian and Vietnamese air traffic control, and they began searching and contacting airports near the point where the plane disappeared. Perhaps there was a malfunction in the plane and the pilot landed it at the nearest airport, but all the responses to their communications were negative. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, the Malaysian Air Navigation Authority declared a state of emergency and informed all neighboring countries to assist them in starting the search operation, hoping that someone would inform them that the plane had appeared, but to no avail, and they held on to this hope until 6:30 in the morning, the time the plane was supposed to arrive at the Chinese capital's airport in Beijing. However, Beijing Airport did not receive the flight at its scheduled time, causing concern among the families of the passengers waiting for them inside the airport, where they began to notice the unexplained delay until the airport management was forced to officially announce that Malaysian Flight 370 was missing in an unknown location, prompting television stations to cover the event moment by moment until the news spread like lightning all over the world. Especially when shocking news reached the families of the missing once again, when they learned that the plane they were waiting for could only fly for 9 hours, after which the plane's fuel tank would run out and it would crash if it did not land. And when the families of the passengers learned of this news, chaos and panic erupted inside Beijing airport, and the families requested urgent intervention from the government, especially when the airport management informed them of the news, they contacted the missing persons at the same time to confirm the news, only to be surprised that most of the phones were ringing with no one answering. For this reason, they decided to pressure the government to expedite the search and rescue whatever can be saved, because there is a high possibility that they are still alive in a place with mobile phone coverage. And the reason they are not answering the phone could be that they might be kidnapped. This created significant pressure on the Malaysian and Chinese authorities, prompting them to send a joint aerial search team consisting of 38 planes and 43 ships. Unfortunately, the first day ended without finding any trace of the plane or any part of its wreckage. And after 2 days had passed since the plane disappeared, the search continued without any results, and rumors began to circulate among people about a malfunction in the plane that caused it to explode following the last conversation between the pilot and the Malaysian air traffic management. Then the telecommunications company issued an official statement saying that the calls the families of the missing are talking about are phantom calls, because international calls pass through many transfers before reaching the recipient's phone, which causes the caller to hear the ringing sound before the recipient's phone actually rings. Based on this statement, most people came out and said that all the passengers had died. Therefore, the role of the search teams is to find the wreckage of the plane and the bodies of the passengers. And up to the 15th of March, 2014. The officials received news that completely changed the search path, as information emerged confirming that the flight did not stop at the point where the monitoring signals disappeared, which is the place they have been searching since its disappearance, but rather the plane stopped transmitting at this location and changed its course in another direction. And this is what the Malaysian military forces discovered through long-range radars. When this information first appeared, everyone thought that the time to find the plane was near, only to later discover that the information they received complicated the problem further. Because the radars showed that the plane went a distance and then returned at the same time towards Malaysian territory until it reached the borders of Penang City, then changed its course towards the northwest coast, and after an hour, it disappeared again, due to leaving the coverage range of military radars, leaving behind great mystery and many unanswered questions. Who made the captain change the plane's course suddenly, without informing the control center, and when he returned to Malaysia a second time, why didn't he return to Kuala Lumpur airport? And what was the reason for changing direction towards the Indian Ocean? And who disconnected the monitoring devices on the plane and prevented it from communicating? If we assume they were indeed hijacked, and the pilot was forced to take this strange route, who were the ones who hijacked them? And why didn't they speak or make any requests until the 7th day of disappearance? The many questions that arose after the news spread left people puzzled and bewildered, and numerous theories emerged. To explain the reason for the plane's disappearance, suddenly a Chinese group appeared out of nowhere, calling themselves the Chinese Martyrs Brigade. They said they are responsible for the disappearance of the plane, and they sent a message to the journalists saying, if you kill any member of our group, we will kill 100 of you in return. But no one had ever heard of this group before, and they did not appear after that message. For this reason, the authorities decided not to investigate the matter and considered it merely a distraction and rumor, after which Najib Razak appeared. The Malaysian Prime Minister stated that the administrative transceivers on the plane cannot disconnect on their own, and it is necessary for someone inside the plane to manually disconnect them. Based on this statement, people came up with two possibilities. Either the plane was indeed hijacked and forced to change course, or the person who did it was the pilot. To remove some doubts, they started looking into the passenger records of those on the plane to confirm if there was anyone with a criminal background or intentions of hijacking. After thorough investigation, they suspected two individuals, Puri Nur Mohammadi and Dilawar Syed Reza. These two young men from Iran were among the passengers. Later, the authorities discovered that they had passed through the airport with a stolen passport, which is why they were more suspicious of them. Then they discovered, after investigations, that they were poor and were traveling to look for work, and thus they were removed from the circle of suspicion like all the passengers of flight MH370. And since up to this moment, no one has claimed the hijacking of the plane or reported the presence of hostages, there remains one possibility that many people talk about and are convinced of, which is that the pilot and his co-pilot are the main ones responsible for the disappearance of the plane. The captain of flight MH370. The captain, Zahari Ahmad Shah, 53 years old, began working for Malaysia Airlines in the year 1981. His professional experience attests to his high competence and over 20,000 hours of flying experience. As for the first officer, he is the brigadier. Farid Abdul Hamid is 27 years old. He has experience and expertise amounting to 7 years in aviation with Malaysia Airlines. These two are known for their discipline and diligence at work, and everyone attests to their high morals. Additionally, no complaints have been recorded against them throughout their aviation careers. The thing that made them suspicious is that there is no one on the plane who can disable the monitoring devices or control the flight path other than those two. For this reason, people started looking into their personal lives, hoping to find any new information that might bring them closer to explaining what happened. The beginning was with Zahari Ahmad Shah, the first pilot and controller of the plane. The Malaysian authorities went and raided his house, conducting a thorough and high-level search, and they found a simulator resembling the aircraft cockpit in his home. But the authorities considered it a normal thing for a veteran pilot who loves flying, especially when they found he had a YouTube channel where he appears, and he explains how to fly the plane using the cockpit device they found in his home. When they examined the cockpit device, they found data resembling the route taken by the missing plane, as if he had planned the incident and was practicing for it in advance. Based on that, a theory emerged suggesting that Zahari Ahmad intentionally hid the plane with a well-planned strategy, as he knew exactly the points where he would exit Malaysian airspace. And entering the Vietnamese airspace is a blind spot, meaning it is the most suitable place to change the plane's direction. This is to prevent any tension and anxiety among the crew and passengers. Then they might start noticing what is happening. That was a banana idea. The theory also says that the pressure was released from the plane as if an emergency occurred. In this case, it will be difficult to breathe at the high altitude of the plane. After that, the oxygen masks will automatically drop, and this way the passengers will remain seated. However, the passengers' oxygen masks are only valid for 15 minutes. In the front of the plane, it's different as the pilot's masks last longer. And after 15 minutes, the passengers will faint due to lack of oxygen, and none of them will know what is happening on the plane. After that, he will descend the plane to a level that allows him to breathe naturally without masks. Then he continues his plan quietly. As for his return to Malaysia for the second time, it was interpreted as a final farewell to his country, especially when he returned to Malaysia and headed directly to Penang, his birthplace. But if we assume that this theory we mentioned is true, so what is the reason that makes a person who loves flying, with a large family, including children and grandchildren, commit this disaster? And when he took the plane, where did he want to go with it? Because if it entered the airspace of any other country, the news would spread like lightning. Days passed, and the search was still ongoing. Everyone was convinced that the passengers were among the dead, but there was no information about where the plane had reached. The matter became like searching for a needle in a haystack, because the Indian Ocean is considered the third largest ocean in the world. This makes it difficult for them to start searching in it due to its vastness and the danger of the venture. Additionally, there is no point or path to follow. And by the 20th of March 2014, the Malaysian authorities received information from the satellite of the British company Inmarsat about coordinates of the expected location where the plane might have crashed, because the plane was equipped with devices connected to the satellite. Belonging to the same company, this type of satellite communicates with the aircraft's devices through waves resembling heartbeats, with 1 hour between the first and second pulse. And when they did some calculations and added the fuel status, the distance traveled, and the speed of the plane, they were able to determine the area where it reached the border with Australia. They said this place is where the plane was supposed to have crashed. And despite that, they determined the area where they would start the search, but the area was very large, extending 110 kilometers in length and 225 kilometers in width in the middle of the ocean, in a region very far from land. And during this period, the largest and most expensive search operation in the history of aviation will begin. The search area marked on the map was approximately 1,400 kilometers away from the nearest land, which is the shores of Australia. For the Australian search ships to reach the designated area, they would have to travel for 2 days. And this was the first problem they faced. The plane is supposed to have crashed in this location about 2 weeks ago, and certainly during these days, the waves and sea currents will carry the wreckage of the plane from its crash site to another area. Therefore, considering the time that has passed since its possible crash plus the 2 days for them to arrive, it is very likely that the plane will be outside the area they will search, and thus they will not find it. Although Australia has no connection to this incident, it contributed $60 million and a group of its most skilled search team members to search for the plane alongside staff and officials from China and Malaysia. When they arrived at the location, they used the black box that was inside the plane. The black box is equipped with a GPS device. Its name is ULB. When this device is submerged underwater, it starts emitting a sound or vibrations that can reach a distance of approximately 1.5 kilometers. This means if we get close to the box, we will be able to receive its sound or vibrations from above the ships, and thus we can locate the plane. But the problem is that the battery capacity in the device lasts only 30 days. So they lost about 2 weeks, and only 2 weeks remain before they lose hope of finding it. And after 5 days of searching day and night, they found nothing. Suddenly, their devices received strange signals from underwater. The first time they received them, they said, "This is the signal from the aircraft device we are looking for." And moments later, the joy was incomplete, as they discovered that the signals were from the search devices on their ships. They continued their diligent work until a month had passed since the plane's disappearance, losing hope in finding the black box. The commotion caused by the disappearance of Flight MH370 attracted the attention and sympathy of many people around the world, and everyone wanted to help in any way, even with a simple idea, to find it. A team of researchers at Australia's Curtin University decided to monitor a network of sensitive underwater microphones that had been previously planted around the Australian coasts for the purpose of detecting earthquakes. When they reviewed all the microphone records, they noticed there were recordings of a strange signal. An hour and a half after the last contact with the plane, they said this sound could be from the plane's collision with the water when it fell into the sea. But before they head out and start searching in the suspected area, at the same time, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization issued a statement saying that their devices also detected the same sound, but from a very distant location. This led the Malaysian authorities to consider two possibilities. Either they were searching in the wrong place, or the sound was unrelated to the plane and was due to geological reasons. Since they were under pressure, they decided to continue searching in the location they were in, and completely ignores the issue of the signal. And on the 40th day of the plane's disappearance, Malaysia, Australia and China agreed to use a set of the latest sonar equipment and submarines to explore the ocean floor in the area, knowing that 99% of this area in the Indian Ocean is completely unknown to them. And it has not been explored or studied before, so they did not know the shape of the seabed or what is in it, but nevertheless, they had no choice but to venture with everything they have and benefit from the experience. And after they descended into the depths of the ocean, unfortunately, they found only remnants of old ships and pieces of coal. And after a search that lasted for 15 months in the depths of the ocean, they reached a search area estimated at 60,000 square kilometers and found no trace. More than a year after the tragic incident, exactly on the 29th of July 2015, a group of young people were fishing on the shore of the French island of Réunion, located in the western Indian Ocean near Madagascar, when they were surprised by the appearance of a strange, large, white metallic object. The waves brought it out onto the shore. The first time they saw it, they said it was a part of the plane. Then they immediately informed the authorities. At that moment, delegations from different countries, led by Malaysia, arrived to examine the piece. It turned out to be part of Flight 370. This became the first tangible physical evidence that the plane apparently exploded over the Indian Ocean. Accordingly, the Malaysian Prime Minister announced that it is impossible for any passenger of Flight MH370 to have survived. And 2 days after this statement, the leader of the Malaysian Democratic Party appeared, refuting the Prime Minister's statements. He said that the aircraft of Flight 370 has not been found, and that the piece they found is not it, nor does it resemble the structure of the missing Boeing 777 aircraft, and that the Malaysian government failed in the search and finding it after spending $200 million in losses on the investigation without result. In order to hide its failure and appease the anger of the families of the missing, the government was forced to lie to the Malaysian people to cover up its failure and gain votes in the upcoming elections at that time. And after this serious statement, with a crisis between the government and the Malaysian opposition, in June of the year 2017, the military forces and the Malaysian Air Navigation Administration announced in a joint official statement that the Flight MH plane was not found at all. Flight 370 disappeared for unknown reasons, with the search for it officially halted, leaving Flight 370 completely mysterious and unknown to this day. And you, dear viewer, share your opinion with us in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to our channel to receive all the latest updates.